Hi everybody, Steve the Amateur Historian, and it is July 3rd, 2021. You know what that means? A new day, a new video. And this one, I can see more than likely this might be the shortest video I do in this whole series because it's based on a very short and simple story that I saw it and I was like, there's really not a whole lot to elaborate on with this. But this is just, you know, the strange things that will just happen. Strange enough that they get a little piece in a newspaper somewhere. I almost feel like I'm wasting time even bothering telling you how you can support my channel, but I have to do that. Oh my God, the geese are going nuts. Anyway, if you haven't already or you're new to the channel, remember, like, share, subscribe, hit up my Patreon. Even $1 helps me, and I'm always posting new stuff there for you in the form of little podcast things I do, previously unreleased content, old videos that I haven't re-uploaded, various things that you can only see extras of if you become a patron today. Or, you know, tomorrow, but if you wait till tomorrow, you'll probably forget. Anyway, the link to my Patreon is in the description below, as well as the links to my Instagram and Facebook pages, closely related to the content I'm producing on this channel, Steve the Amateur Historian. That intro alone may be longer than the rest of the video, but I know me. I find ways to draw things out. Anyway, here's today's video. Alright, so it's 1918. We got a 50-year-old guy named M. Loughton who lived at 304 4th Street, which would be downtown Portland today, somewhere in downtown Portland. Looks a lot like this. Probably not a lot of houses there. And on this day, around 1 p.m., Loughton leaves his home. He's gonna go to a corner market at 374 Front, or was it First? I always mix Front and First up. First Street, 374 First Street, which this is how that location looks today. So it's probably a fairly short trip. You know, he's just, and all Loughton is doing is, yeah, I don't know, maybe he wants to have some cereal, maybe he's worried about his bone stability, I don't know, but the guy needs some calcium, so he's going to this little store on First, and his only purpose is he just wants to buy a jug of milk. That's all he wants. Here's a jug, here's some, you know, coins, because a jug of milk was probably like 5 cents back then. I'll take my milk and depart and go on with my day. And you know, maybe Loughton was destined for great things that day. Maybe he was destined to find the cure for a previously incurable disease. Maybe he was going to invent something. Maybe he was going to do something that would change our world forever. He was going to come up with some process of thinking that would instigate world peace for every future generation to follow. But if something that great and grand was destined to happen, it, alas, did not, as obviously none of that happened, because if it had, you would know who M. Loughton was. Maybe, just maybe, one of the reasons that never happened was as M. Loughton walked into the store, grabbed a jug of milk, went up to the counter. It's like, how much do I owe you, shopkeep? And shopkeep tells him. Loughton put some coins down on the table to pay for his milk, and then for whatever reason, M. Loughton seized up, collapsed to the ground, and literally dropped dead immediately, with his milk still sitting there on the counter. He hadn't even picked it up off the counter to depart after paying for it. He just dropped dead right there at the little checkout counter. And just as a side note, they made sure to mention that Loughton's daughter lived at 305 2nd Avenue, which literally would put her almost, figuratively, almost in between her dad and the store. You know, Portland was smaller back then. People lived closer to each other. I don't know why they would put that detail in a story like this. Maybe they need to fill it out some more, because it was literally just a guy goes to the store, buys some milk, and drops dead. It's very, because that was very common. They would, newspapers, like, I don't know, they got a high off of figuring out where everybody remotely related to someone who was the focal point of a story, where they lived. They'd always just be like, oh, so-and-so's wife lives at this address. It's the exact opposite of now. Nowadays, we don't want anybody knowing where we live. We don't want anybody, unless you're like a, you know, unless you're something we got to deal with, unless you're the power company, or you're my insurance company, or, you know, the place that I work, unless it's a place that really needs to know that stuff. It's like your social security number. You don't want anybody knowing your address now. But back then, you know, obviously technology wasn't the way it was, and there was either fewer creepers walking about hoping to find out where you lived, or people were just a lot less aware. But yeah, that's literally today's video, is a man on this date back in 1918, walked a few blocks to the corner store, bought a jug of milk, all seemed normal, dropped dead right there on the spot. And it just blew anybody who was in the area, blew their minds. They had no idea what had happened. The guy was 50, so he wasn't super old, but you know, people that age might die of various things, and we don't know anything about this guy. Was he a heavy drinker? Was he a heavy smoker? Did he have a lingering disease that, you know, either he wasn't paying attention to, or maybe was undiagnosed? There's a lot of possibilities. I certainly don't know why he died, because this article just popped up as a little piece in a newspaper, and that was all I ever found about it. They said the coroner was, you know, had taken possession of the body, and they were going to try to figure out what the heck happened. But since I couldn't find any follow-up article, I don't know what their conclusions were. So as far as I know, this guy just walked into a walked into a store. That would be a funnier story. He walked into a door and dropped dead. But no, he walked into a store and just dropped dead out of absolute nowhere. It's tragic, but it's comedically strange. It's dark comedy and strange and bizarre and unexpected, kind of all wrapped into one in this little simple story. These random, you know, usually when we die, it's either in our sleep or it's something a little more dramatic than buying a bottle of milk. But anyway, wherever you are, wherever you were buried, wherever you are floating around in heaven, Mr. M. Loughton, just know that over a century later, I'm thinking and talking about you. You shan't be forgotten. And that's today's story. Dedicated to M. Loughton, a guy who just wanted a little milk to make it through the day, and little did he know he was not going to make it through the day regardless. A little dark. I thank you so much, as always, for watching today's video, shorter though it was. Before I depart, you know, if you're new or you haven't already, remember to like, share, subscribe to the channel. That obviously is a big help. Hit up my Patreon. Again, I'm posting a whole bunch of stuff there in the form of, you know, podcasts, previously unreleased content, you know, old videos that I haven't re-uploaded, a lot of stuff that you can only access if you become a patron. And even if it's just $1 a month, I love you and I thank you for your support. The link to that is in my description with this video, as well as the links to my Instagram and Facebook pages, closely related to the content I'm producing on this channel, Steve the Amateur Historian. With all that said, this has been Steve the Amateur Historian, and I'll see you tomorrow. Don't drink milk.